Náisiúnta agus idir náisiúnta gáléomh brídní anna cho. Tá sé dearbhaigh gur bhása siir sa timpeiste Eitleáin na hála géarfart thorcail maidineomh. Tá sé rála gortaí bersacha go donna gur ar na tuairiscí.
Bhí an Tetalán tréis béal firiste ágant ar dechan na hocht ar maidin agus bhí sú leis I gCorcaigh ar an naí. Bhí ceo traum ar fúdan régiúin ag an nám.
Bhí sé tar éis gá iarachtaí inmh rivan trágáid gá iarracht a hurlingta I gCorcaigh ach hep ar bhí.
Eitilán beg leis an ggólacht Manx2 bhí inte agus íhéis an tarasí an na spéal firiste.
And now with news of traffic and travel, here's Nicola Hudson of AA Roadwatch.
Thank you, and a widespread dense fog is impacting on traffic across the country this morning, so drive with extreme care and use your fog lights in the affected areas. Now, extreme care will be needed around Limerick City in particular.
Darius an lua Marvi an nettles a hochtalog agus í sort marvel mar ní raibh mé ní raibh gohan chalta fáilte agam.
Well, it was a fairly normal morning for me. I was travelling from Belfast down to Cork for business. I hadn't made that journey before, actually. I happened to be in Belfast for a meeting the day before, so it was unusual for me to be travelling by plane. I would normally have driven.
Chuig mé le me char thug sé siab dom go dtí an Tairfort. Chuig mé tríd an Seiceáil Slándála agus an sin dan mé gár an fógra don Etalt.
I was staying in Lisburn. I remember it being quite damp and cold. I got the car, drove to George Best International Airport, parked the car there and checked in as normal as you would for any flight. I think I was playing with my iPhone. I would have been on, checking the sports news that was going on with Spurs or whatever.
Hasty going sort sosáil agus Peter Cui agus me leabhar léamh bhí bébal agus leabhar ar fáilte chóireacht agam freisin agus just hasty going sort ciúna sáil ribh obair an lé a bhí ráim I gCorcaigh.
My boss was down with me on the Monday. He had taken that flight down and I remember him telling me it's such a small plane. He was kind of almost laughing at the size of the plane, and he was saying, if you're on that plane, sit at the back. But as it was on the morning, I went up the steps and sat, and the first seat that I could see that was empty.
There's only a few of us on board, 10 passengers, I think. So I sat down in a seat that was over the wing, so it had a little bit more leg room. It was quite a small plane. I had to stoop and bend over to actually walk down the gangway of the plane to get to my seat. I got a book out and my iPod and settled down for the flight. And then shortly after, the guy in the fluorescent jacket who'd been loading the bags actually got onto the plane, closed the door, took his yellow jacket off and sat down in the pilot's seat.
The guy who gave us the presentation or in the cockpit, it was also flying the plane.
The ré an piláid tríd na fógraí Slándála nóir dhéanaan fáirne Eitleán rudaí mar sin. Tugam faoi deara agus ar hagla na hagla, déanam iarracht cuoinú air. chug mé faoi deara go raibh roinnt daoine ag sna suíochán tosaigh, agus mar sin chuig mé go dtí cúán Eisleán, níor cheap mé go mbeadh na rudaí a dhéanamh mé ar an Eisleán sin chomhdach san. Níor bhéin caint gom léine léamh mé chuid den leabhar, chuid den fíoba agus an sin chuig mé dás mé gaí agus an sin déag mé amach an inó go smínteach.
The two pilots were obviously in the cockpit. There was two men in row 1 and I was on my own in row 2. And then everyone else obviously would have been behind me. And the plane is so small that basically there's a seat, you know, on the left hand side, then in the centre there's a tiny alley, and then there's a seat on the right hand side. This was a much smaller plane, so it was very shaky.
The flight itself was fairly uneventful. I was listening to my iPod, I dozed a little bit, I read some of the magazines, the in-flight magazine. And then we approached Cork Airport. I recognised Cork from the hills and things around, having flown out of Cork a number of times before.
Thosnaigh an Tetlan ag é slú de bhí ahrú I bhuaim an inal agus bhí an cumair scéal go raibh an píláite géirigh tarlingte. Ach an sin tar éis grúpa seconds tháinig go mar aníos as na scamil agus thosnaí mar ag cearclú timpeall an ceantar.
Nothing unusual in that. I've been on planes before that have made a couple of attempts to land.
Chuig mar timpeall an ceantar go dtí beidir 10 ómid, agus is sin tháinig an rud chéan a ríist, agus thosnaí mar ag é slú tríd an scamil.
On the second attempt to land, I remember the plane dropping into the fog, shaking, a lot of shaking in the plane.
Agus an sin tar éis grúpa seconds tháinig mar níos tríd na scamil a ríis.
There's a little bit of nervous chatter, I think, in the plane at the time. A few people looking around and talking to people who were next to them or in front of them.
I could see everything going on in the cockpit. I could see them clearly. I could see the two pilots. I could see them communicating to each other, and I could see them passing, you know, folders and, you know, pages, and actually it looked like they were actually looking to find an alternative, you know, airport to land on.
Bhí an cumair na daoine eile san Eisleán go raibh rud at a rééis tarlú. Ach an sin tháinig an pílóit amachchas cró na pílóta agus dúirt sé doing go raibh sé tar éis iarracht a dhéanamh tarlingt I gCorcaigh ach de hepéir. Dúirt sé linn go raibh sé chun cearclú an ceantar agus dhéanamh sé iarracht eile dul síos. Tar éis fill nómid nó mar sin de íslig an Tetlan ríis. Níor mé ná faca ag cháil bhí an cio có teofsan agus an sin díreach thaobh me lámh clé chunachas talamh agus ceap mé go raibh an Tetlan ag teacht síos róthapig agus go raibh an talamh róchar doing.
And then we started to bank for some reason to the right-hand side. And as I looked out the window, I could see the wing was very close to the ground, and then there was a big surge of power, and the wingtip just was about to touch the ground. I just shouted out, "We're going to crash, we're going to crash."
Bhí an Tetlan imethe smacht agus I gachran panas ceann agus bhí an Tetlan ag rith tríd an bhéir agus bhí ag feitheamh don bhás stáim mar cheap mé gribh Deireling, ceap mé gribh an bás in Rundoing. Ní an timpiste hála an Tetlan faoi éire chun stad agus bhí spónas ceann agus ri sé lom tar éis cúpla nómad cruibh mé fós beo amach bhí sé dubh doracha. Ní raibh tuairim dá leideagam cad a hála dus na fashionéir eile.
An céad gléach a tháinig amach ní raibh mór an ólas ann just gur tháinig Etalán síos sús an airport agus gach garda a raibh timpeall agus ag obair taobh straight go dtí an airport.
When we left the fire station, I thought actually we were going to a drill. And it was only until we got up the airport hill that we realised it was a real plane crash. And I turned to Frankie, who was my colleague on the fire engine, and I said to him, Frankie, this is real. You know, this is a plane crash. Now, I had never been at a plane crash, so I didn't actually know what to expect at that stage.
Chonaic mé an Etalán agus ní raibh mé ábalta an cockpit an tasach an Etalán eiscint bhí sé imethe agus chonaic mé an fuselage an Etalán agus bhí páirt amháin sais ceart go leor ach bhí an páirt eile imethe.
I can remember distinctly saying to my manager, we won't have much to do here, we won't be that busy. I couldn't imagine anybody surviving that.
Deich mé amach an inóg agus chonachas go raibh an sciatháin trí hinne.
And I thought, my God, we've just survived a plane crash and now we are going to explode or going to die in a burning plane.
Thug mé cic don fuinóg thaobh me labhad deise choláidir sa bhí me chumas ach de heparm é bhrise agus ceap mé greibh Deireling. Bhí mé feitheamh ag ar bula marfach.
There was still lots of shouting inside, lots of screaming, lots of awful noises coming from people who were obviously in pain. And I was quite panicky obviously at that point.
We have about 2 to 3 minutes to attend the scene because if we don't, the airplane will explode. The airport fire service were at the scene immediately and they contained any potential explosion.
Chúil mé cnágacha agus scáthanna ón David Má agus de scrad mé freisin ag iarraigh léir na daoine bhí ag tacht.
Suddenly the plane was bathed in light as they'd managed to get the emergency door open. And then all these Irish voices flooded in.
Dúirt siad go raibh gráidir ag tacht isteach go dtí an Etalán agus de rinne siad slí éilú i gcúil an Etalán agus chiúil mé amach lo siúd.
I managed to get my arm up sort of through a sea of people and coats and things, and someone grabbed my hand and said, "It's okay, we'll get you out shortly."
Well, nuair chuas amachchas an Etalán bhíos faoi sibh an domharm bhíos just chomh buchasach grabbed mé fós beo.
I could hear someone saying that they were having difficulty breathing because under the weight of all of the mud, they had sort of had a mouthful of mud and they were shouting, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe."
To get the people out of the fuselage was actually extremely difficult. The fuselage was upside down and it was also full of mud. So the mud was literally up to my waist.
Yeah, I smashed all of my shoulder and my ribs and my shoulder blade. I was in the plane for about 45 minutes, I think, before they managed to get me out. And it wasn't until they moved me that I realised how much pain I was actually in. I was pulled out and put onto a board, a solid sort of stretcher board, and taken to a triage tent.
I was brought into the tent and I administered last rites to the people who were in the tent. I didn't look really at the scene because my focus was on the job I had to do there. The feeling of horror and bewilderment and amazement at these young people who were now no more. It was awful.
When I was dealing with Peter Cowley in the fuselage, we had to crawl in to get him, but he was screaming and for help, and it was extremely difficult because I couldn't get to him. There was a couple of chairs that were stopping me getting access to him. Now I did have verbal access to him, so he could hear me.
He was trying to get my eyes to open and I wouldn't open my eyes. I just wouldn't, He said, "You're upside down." And he was pleading with me. He said, "Peter, open your eyes, so I can see." And I just was like, no, I'm not.
I was lying on my belly with my right arm extended using a small little hydraulic tool to try and cut the chair that he was trapped on. Another chair collapsed and blocked his exit because it was such a small area that we were dealing with. I thought that we just couldn't get this guy out. We just couldn't get him out. It was very emotional as well because the guy was obviously in a lot of pain.
I had broken neck, a couple of broken vertebrae in the back of my neck. I had 8 broken ribs, which punctured my lungs. I had a broken collarbone. My hand was badly damaged, and my ear was completely apparently severed down to the bottom point here. So that completely severed.
The mud had got into the mechanism of the tools, so they wouldn't work. So we had to basically take the tools back out, wash them down, and then use them again. At that stage, I was just praying to God that this tool would work, because if it hadn't worked, he was stuck there, and he was going to die. After about, I suppose it must have been 30 minutes, we eventually cut all the debris away and freed him from the wreckage.
Ceapan tú go bhfuil an treanáil déanta agat agus ceapan tú go méid tú ábhailte gach rud a bhaint amach sa slí ceart agus fiú déanann tú na rudaí sin go léir. Ach nuair sigann tú ar ais agus smaoiníonn tú ar níl tú réig agus ní léon duine réig.
I think the airport staff were very well aware that events like this could happen. They were very well trained for it. It has cast a cloud, but the cloud is sort of strange because the cloud is in two ways. The cloud is joy and happiness that so many people survived, and then sorrow at those who didn't survive.
Ní raibh an Tubaiste Manx2 ach fáca le cúpla lá ige Oliver Lee, pialóta naimní na fihid, nuair a thuirling an Tetláin a bhíoh fenistúil go réalta de thuairt sa cheó in Airfort Chorcaigh. Mar íoch ceathrar paisinéir sa Tubaiste, mar aine sa pialóta cúnta Andrew Cantle agus an pialóta Jordi Lopez, buan chara a bethe siúd d'Oliver.
Oliver grew up with airlines and travel around him and had an interest from a very early age, despite the fact that when he was about 5, as a family, we were involved in an air crash at Leeds Bradford Airport. That obviously had a profound effect on Oliver, and the next time we took a family holiday, Louise, my wife, and I had to physically drag him across the runway where he was actually sick with fear. Despite that, he always carried on with the interest in planes. He had all the models and wanted to be a pilot from a very early age. Oliver had been a pilot for Manx 2 for almost a year leading up to the crash, and regularly flew the plane between Belfast and Cork. Christmas Eve 2010, he was offered a job flying 737s for Jet 2, which was everything Oliver had ever wanted and worked for. He handed his notice in with Manx 2 and left the last week of January 2011, a week or 10 days before the crash. We knew he was upset about the accident and had a certain amount of self-guilt that he should have been flying the plane on that day. If he had, having experience of the weather conditions and the route, he thought that the events would have taken a different turn and hopefully the accident would never have happened and 6 people would still be alive. And that ate away at him over the weeks. We did discuss this as father and son, and I actually suggested that he went to see a counsellor to get all his misgivings off his chest and hopefully clear his mind so that he could get on with his life. Then we had the awful events of Easter Sunday, April the 24th, when I received a frantic phone call from my daughter that something had happened to Oliver and I needed to get home as quickly as I could. So I jumped in the car, drove down from the Lake District back to our home, and which was surrounded with police cars, and discovered that Oliver had unfortunately taken his own life and died. Become, I think, the 7th victim of the Cork air crash.
It leads me very much appreciate what I have. It would leave you to cherish your family. Just appreciate everyone that's in your life, your friends who showed great support. And that's, if anything, I've gained that and cherished that.
I've kind of had lots of thoughts about why I should survive and why other people didn't, and I really haven't got any answers. But before the crash, I was quite easygoing, and I've become a little bit less so since the crash, I must say. I'm probably a little bit more tense now than I was, and a bit more nervous than I was, and less easygoing. And I think, and that's some of the things that I'm working through with some professional help.
Sean Ross aisteach about faoin treigeid ná níor chuirtíoch mé néanas. Níor déanach éon chuir tú fisiciúil róchannagam cé gur déanach an sort rud sin dus do fashion ar eile. Is sé mo chuirdim gur bhar mé se agus ná bhar duine eile. Stoim go bhfuil sort plan éigeannig dia chum. Agus ní am cíimiid sa taucaí cad é sin cadtá an andam. Agus ní lisagam agus ní bheith isagam cinnte cin fáin nar bhar na daoine eile ach bé tal é agus caithimid ghlacha leis.
Well, is dóilm go bhfuil anna bheasaige inis ar an maithe agus ar an saoil. Agus is dóilm go dtigann sé cé go tapa gan cuine a déiteach éon bheathe a stoppa. Tá míad an son óid, tá míad imethe nóid eile gur hála an timpiste go tapig son. Agus is tó go gahamíad fear agus saoil a chathaf.